and my guest today is a very bold man because when you take a restaurant, you open it, and you call it Very Important Pizza, you are setting a baseline right off the bat that is pretty tall, hard to clear. But after eating here several times, I am happy to report that it is indeed Very Important Pizza. You have cleared that bar. Hey there, Omaha. Welcome into another episode of Restaurant Hoppen. I'm your host, Dan Hoppen, and my guest today is a very bold man because when you take a restaurant, you open it, and you call it Very Important Pizza, you are setting a baseline right off the bat that is pretty tall, hard to clear. But after eating here several times, I am happy to report that it is indeed Very Important Pizza. You have cleared that bar. And I was just like, I got to meet this guy. I got to talk to the owner.
So I appreciate that.
Dylan Espinoza, one of the owners of Very Important Pizza. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here.
Okay, so let's start off. Tell me about the name. I've seen you talk about it in other interviews, but I got to pick your brain here. Like, as you're establishing, I want a New York slice shop in Omaha. How do I catch people's attention? Sure. Where does that name come from? You
know, it's funny. It has caught a lot of attention. And I suppose it works in my head on a few different planes. And to be honest with you, the sort of surface level of it, it's just kind of silly, right? Because very important people, or VIP being very important person, it's just kind of a silly play on words that's not terribly thought through. Also on like a, second level, not to get too deep here, but it's like, in terms of family and the things that really matter to you in this world, there's almost no such thing as Very Important Pizza. Like, it's pizza. I love pizza to death, but it is literally just pizza in terms of your loved ones and the things that matter to you most. And so it felt funny. It felt funny to me to say Very Important Pizza because while I think it's very important, it's almost inherently a joke because it's just pizza.
It's playful.
It's playful. That's exactly right. That's how, in my head, that's how it always sounded. And the way, not that I've gotten a lot of negative reaction to it, but the way people have really taken that seriously has been something that I maybe didn't expect to the degree that it has happened. But, another plane that it works on for me is that really, truly, bottom of my heart, I take this all extremely seriously. And it's very, very important to me. And it's not just, again, I was saying before we got on about kind of giving long answers, but it's like, anything, the most important things to you in your life are just things that you've decided, I'm going to put all of myself into this. And so it can be pizza, it can be your family, it can be any number of pursuits, but like that's the only thing that has importance is whatever we decide, I'm going to put all of myself into this. And so while it's playful on one end, kind of the part I keep in my pocket is like, I'm very, very serious about it. It is Very Important Pizza. Every single thing we do on the menu is something that was not, there's no accidents. It's all exactly the way. And that's why at this point, especially for how young we are, the menu is so small because we're not going to put anything out that is not to a certain standard. And so, it's funny because even before we opened, there was some comment sections online and stuff that was, I wouldn't say started arguments and I wasn't involved, but, we're kind of getting back and forth with people kind of taking the implication that Very Important Pizza was to imply that other pizza wasn't important. And that's not the implication at all. My comment on this has nothing to do with anybody else. It's just this here at this shop, we're taking this very, very seriously, from the pizza to the community, by which I not only mean the customers, but the staff itself, the culture that you build. These are all things that, that I'm just taking very, very seriously every single day. And so it's been kind of funny and surprising in a way to hear people react to it in a way that they take an implication here, or they think that I'm saying that I'm better than every single person in this other way. And it's like, no, it's just kind of silly. It's playful. And for my part that, is just for me, I mean it. It's at this point in my life, it's the most important thing I'm doing by a grip. So I have been a little bit surprised. I kind of figured everybody would hear it in the kind of playful tone that the surface level was meant to have it at. But, I'll take it. And I'll take the compliment, by the way, because obviously you eat a lot of food and you have a lot of opinions on it. And we've gotten great, great feedback from so many people whose opinions I really value. And so, yeah, I appreciate the shine.
Well, that's what I would say to anyone who doesn't like the name. First of all, get off your high horse. We're talking about pizza.
It's pizza.
What are we doing
Yeah,
here?
exactly.
But one, it's a very memorable name.
Right.
You're not going to forget it.
That's exactly right.
And you will come back. And two, I haven't seen any negative. I'm sure they're out there because everyone has negative reviews. I have a lot of negative reviews. And I mean that about me personally, not about restaurants.
Right,
but
right.
I haven't seen very many negative comments at all. People are digging this place. So if they want to be like, oh, very important pizza, well, go try the pizza.
Yeah.
You'll see it is indeed important.
That's exactly it. Like, there's bands that'll do this where it's like if you get stuck on the gimmick, you were never there for the pizza anyway, right? So if you get stuck on the name and the name turns you off such that you're not gonna come eat anyway, maybe it was never about that to begin with for you. And I'm not trying to make any enemies here, but it's the pizza. If you come in, have a slice of regular, if you don't like it, I'll be surprised because I just can't. It's something I've been trying to execute now for going on 20 years, and it's something I believe in.
Well, yeah, I want to ask you about that because you said when something is very important in your life, you put all of yourself into it.
Sure.
And that is what you've done with this pizzeria. What makes you so passionate about this concept that this is what you've chosen to invest it all in?
Yeah, I suppose a lot of things. On a very, very basic level, I really like it. I've been cooking on and off for a little over 20 years now, and I've found other things that I enjoy doing. But really, truly, after this interview, like I said outside, I'm going to make dough, and it's like I don't even consider that a day at work because making dough is just making dough. It's just there's something about making dough, and all the other prep tasks and the kind of like ownership stuff can kind of tire me out a little bit more. But if I'm on the line making pizza or if I'm in the back making dough, I'm fine. I don't need that much time to rest. I don't need that many days off. It's enjoyable work. I guess the other half of that to me, and this is kind of I was given opportunities when I was younger to be a part of a culture that was encouraging and made me took me from a not very useful employee, 22, 23 years old, to a much, much better employee. And I think that happened by way of the culture that was set at the places that I was working at those ages, and the way that leadership treated the new guys like I was. And so as far as the passion is concerned, there's a vector of it, like I said, that's just how much I enjoy making pizza, how much I enjoy making dough. And I suppose, and this in some ways goes back to the very important answer too, there's a big aspect of this for me that's just culture. That's just not just the culture of the employees, but the culture of the customers, the people that come in every day, the people that come in 2-3 times a week, the people that just showed up from Gretna and only come out once or might only come out once or twice a year. The idea that people are enjoying a sort of tactile experience where there are no TVs and there's just support. There's a community there. Years ago, I read a thing where, there's a link between a person's happiness and a person's longevity and their secondary and tertiary communities, right? And I said it to say, one of the real joys of having the shop is the way your secondary and tertiary communities grow. Because there's all these people that maybe I only know their first name. Maybe I only know them by their order. This guy always gets a 2 cheese and he wants it in a box instead of the bag. And so it's like these ways you can just kind of have small talk with somebody. I don't know, man. It's great. It's just a great way to spend your life. It's not for everybody maybe, but I attached to it. 2009, I started working in pizza. And it was the culture and it was the job itself. And I just latched on. And other than the first 4 years where I was out here in Omaha where I was working at Koji, this has been all I've been doing for, like I said, just passing 17 years now. And yeah, and I think this is probably true for most people, the passion was organic. When I started in pizza, I didn't think, okay, this is it. I'm here forever. But I started at dough and I took a liking to that, and I could pay a kind of curious attention to it, such that you could make a very simple thing 1% better every single day. And whether it's music or this type of cooking or whatever it is, there's certain things that kind of work that way, where you can get 95% of the way there in the first week. And then every day you can add a tiny, tiny, tiny bit more to it until it's, and you're never going to get to 100%. It's never going to be, the symphony's perfect in your head. But as soon as you start playing it, somebody drops a note or somebody comes in too hot. But you can push and you can try. And I suppose that's, on some level, like I said, it's the community that you can kind of build and curate. And on some level, it's for naturally set reasons that I can't really pin down. I really enjoy tasks where I can just kind of a little bit every single day make something a little bit better. It's very satisfying.
That's one of the things about dough that I imagine it's, for some people, like you just said, it's satisfying, and for some people it would just make them pull their hair out, and that there's no mastering it. And I talk to pizza makers all around the city. I've been in the kitchen with Brett Geiger from Izzy's, and he is testing new dough recipes all the time. He's constantly changing his hydration, his water levels, his proofing times, and I'm just like, dude, your pizza is phenomenal.
Right.
You don't need to do this anymore. And he's like, no, it can get a little bit better. It can get a little bit better. So there's that chase. I think for some people, they'd just be like, okay, there's no getting to there's no finish line that I can get to. That's maddening to me.
Right.
But for you, it's constantly a chase, and there's always something new to learn, so it never gets old, right?
For sure. And I mean, everything turns into a job on a certain level, so I'm not going to tell you that I've never experienced 5 minutes here or 10 minutes there where it's like, oh gosh, another batch or whatever it is. But yeah, it's a living thing too, dough specifically, because of, yeast or sourdough, however you start it. You really have to pay a curious attention every single day. And I suppose that's, I don't know. It's like I said, I could talk about things, this feels like it's a theme in almost anything I really end up attaching to, which is anything can get 95% of the way there in a given amount of time. It's the last 5%. It's the last 2%. It's the last 1%. And yeah, it's just very compelling. And it's something that, and within that type of pursuit, there's setbacks.
Oh, absolutely.
There's moments where you try a new thing, you do this or that. It's like, well, that wasn't it. And even that ends up being a form of satisfying, because it's like, well, now I know that. And so, yeah, I do imagine that you're right. There are people for whom, thinking engineers or accountants, where there is a binary thing, right? There's a right way and a wrong way. Mm-hmm. And I could imagine that being somebody with that type of mindset, something like dough or any number of different things would be really frustrating. But, for better or worse, that's the part of it that I think is as satisfying as pretty much any other part of it is. Maybe we try it this way today, maybe we try it that way. And the truth is, especially with how long I've been doing this, we're not making broad changes every day.
Yeah,
it's
tweaks.
Just yeah, exactly. It's what if we put it on the table for 20 minutes instead of 10? What if we got right to the box then right to the walk-in? There's so many links in the chain. For something that only has 4 ingredients in it, and is mostly made by a machine, a spiral mixer. Even given that simplicity, there's so many links in the chain of how much you're touching it, what you're dragging it in, how you're proofing it. That it's just endlessly fascinating, and I could do it for many, many more years than I intend to. And there's still going to be moments on the line and moments on dough 10 years from now where I'm like, I never thought about that. I could try it this way, and then and maybe that'll fail, but you tried. And so, yeah, you kind of have to, I talk about this a lot at the shop, but you can't get too high or too low, with any of this kind of stuff. And I guess I mean that in terms of the experimenting, and I mean that in terms of you can't get too low on a slow night, especially for a new restaurant. You can't get too high on a busy night. You kind of have to stay an even keel. Tomorrow's another day, make another batch of dough. But yeah, it would make some people pull their hair out, but for better or worse, it's something I find very compelling.
God made us all different, and it's good that there's varieties of us.
Oh, I think that all the time. It's so the fact that not everybody's like me is so good. It's a good, and I don't mean that like in any kind of self-deprecating way. It's just everybody takes a village, right? And so it's like it's one of these things that it's a very good thing that there's a lot of us out there.
One of the fascinating things about your shop, I think, is that in a day and age where it seems like so many, I mean, we could go restaurant world at large, but pizzerias especially, it's all about innovation. It's about what can we put on the pizza to make this different? What special can we put out that's going to pop on Instagram that's going to bring everybody in? And you guys are the opposite. You guys are the definition of keeping it simple. And I found you did an interview with, it's one of the TV stations, where you said, this is New York pizza, as traditional as I can possibly make it. We're not trying to reimagine something from scratch here. The wheel works. Let's make a great wheel. What makes you stick to tradition so tightly?
Well, I say that line all the time in my life, irrespective of the shop and in pizza. And I guess, I don't know, a person could say it comes from a lack of creativity if they wanted to, or there could be any number of explanations to that. But truly, I'm so attached to that analogy because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The wheel does work. It's a beautiful thing. There's a satisfaction in making a perfect wheel that has not gotten old for me, or even started to get old. And again, it goes back to what we were saying a second ago of like how grateful I am that there's lots of different types of people in the world, because we need people out there pushing the boundaries and trying to create a thing no one's ever heard of. I love eating those types of things. I love, if it's music, I love listening to that kind of music. Like, we need people pushing those boundaries. Again, for better or worse, I'm 42 next month, and I have figured out what pulls me in, what compels me, what makes it feel effortless to give all of my effort to something. And what I really like doing is trying to create a perfect wheel. And that's true in pizza, and that's true in other kind of arenas in my life. But yeah, it's there are so many, there's a table over there. There's a million examples in your life of like these things that we kind of walk past, these things that we kind of take for granted. And somebody worked very, very hard to make that a right angle. Somebody worked very, very hard to make sure that seal came up perfectly. And I don't mean to say that those things are in any way better or worse or anything like that than somebody that would consider themselves an innovator. But I like working in a small space. I like a small space that only has this much area, and how close can you get to perfect in a small space? There's this, I don't know. I just cut myself off because there's so many kind of metaphors in my head that I use for it. But it's I just find it compelling in like I said, in terms of pizza, but in terms of things I could, go on about. But the idea that something is very, very simple, and that it's, again, to go back to the 95% thing, if I built you a pretty good wheel, you'd get there, like your car, your bike, whatever, still gets there. But man, what if it's perfect? What if it's exactly what a wheel should be? What if there's no rough edges? What if it's a perfect circle? That's great. And on the consumer end of it, on the consumption end of it, you might not even kind of tangibly or consciously notice it. You're just going to think, wow, this is cool. This is great. But every time a person kind of unconsciously thinks something is great, it's because somebody on the front end very consciously made it great. And so, yeah, that wheel line that you mentioned is something that everybody at the shop is probably tired of hearing me say, because I use that as a metaphor all the time of like, nobody needs to reinvent the wheel. But I bet if we all try our hardest today, we can make a perfect wheel. And there's a lot of value in a perfect wheel. And yeah, it's like I say, that analogy kind of follows me around in my head constantly, because there's just so many aspects of life or work or relationships or anything that can seem kind of pedestrian and seem kind of easy to look past. But they only got that way because somebody tried very, very hard. And I guess that's how I see something like this. Like, and again, I know I'm going on here for a minute, but I don't mean this. Just like the very important name was not in any way to make a comment on anybody else's pie. This notion is not in any way to make a comment on anybody else's ambition, anybody else's creativity. I'm so grateful that we have those type of chefs out there. I'm so grateful that we have those type of shops out there. I get to go eat those places. But as far as what I'm compelled to do, as far as what I like to do, I'm trying to make a perfect cheese pizza. And if I do it, someone's going to walk in and for $4 going to be like, whoa, this is crazy. And that's a satisfying day at work. It's great.
What draws you to New York style pizza specifically? I know that that's what your background is in, but
Sure.
when you compare it to other styles, not saying that it's better or worse, but what draws you to that style?
Yeah. I suppose, like you said, some of it is just the background part of it. Some of it is the culture that I've kind of seen around it, and I feel like I just kind of fit in those spaces. And on some level, it's just kind of a boring answer of just taste. It's not as if I've never had a Detroit or Chicago or Neapolitan that I've liked. I've had plenty of that stuff that I've liked, but I've never eaten it and been as thrilled as I am when I'm eating a New York pizza. I mean, we talked about it the first time that you came by the shop, this idea that something is both crunchy and chewy, and that feels like a little bit of a contradiction. Because normally when something's a crunchy, it's just crunchy. But this idea that there's kind of a pillowiness in this, half inch of space, and it's audible. If I'm 8 feet away from you and you eat a slice of pizza, I can hear you eating that pizza because there's a crunch on there. And yeah, to be honest with you, it feels like that question feels like answering, like what. Why is X, Y, or Z your favorite type of music or your favorite type of book? I might be too close to that to know 100%. It just feels right. It's just the thing that I've eaten pizza my whole life, like everybody has, and I can remember all the way back to when I was a kid. So maybe this comes partially from my dad, but whenever we get Pizza Hut or Domino's, whatever, he'd complain about it being too doughy, and so maybe that got lodged in there at some point, but. If a New York pizza is doughy, somebody did something wrong.
Yeah, that's real bad.
That's some bad pizza because
somebody messed up the wheel.
That's exactly right. That's a wheel that's not going to get you there. And so yeah, it's a funny shining a spotlight right on that for me is kind of tough because I'm not sure that I have a perfectly eloquent answer. Just to say that I don't know. I got attached to it and it felt right and. Once I got attached to it, I realized, like I said before, how small of a piece of earth you get to play on and how much space there is inside that, even though it is so small, there's so much space there to improve, to make it perfect. And so, yeah, it's whether it's on the creation side of it or on the consumer side of it, it's just something that I immediately attached to and it just felt natural. And like I say, everybody gets to have their own taste, and I'm not here to gatekeep any of that, but I've just never been super thrilled when I had any other style of pizza. I'm always like, oh, that was good. And then it's kind of just gone. But New York pizza, it's just like, whoa. I'm going to sit here and eat 3 or 4 more slices of this. And that's what I like when people do, because that's what I do when I try new slice shops over the years in different cities is my favorite kind of customer sometimes is the one that'll come over to the bar or a booth and they'll get 1 slice and they'll eat that slice and they'll come up and get another slice because it's like you're controlling, it comes out hottest and freshest. You get to decide exactly how many you want, how full you are. You get to try different slices, and that's how I tend to. Anytime I try a slice shop for the first time, 1 slice of regular, sit down, eat that, and then see where we go from there. Yeah, it's just there's a handful of foods over the years that I get really, really attached to, but very early on, New York pizza was one of them. And I just love it. I love the culture. I love everything about it.
I love that you said you always start with 1 slice of regular.
Yeah.
Because you had an Instagram post a couple weeks ago where I was like, okay, yes, this is my spot. I get it, because it was a whole paragraph, but I want to just go with the first line. You said, even after all these years making New York pizza, the perfect execution of a plain cheese pizza is still the most satisfying thing to cook. And that like spoke to my soul, because I always start with a restaurant's cheese pizza, but I want to hear it from you. Why do you start with the plainest slice right off the bat when you visit somewhere? Sure.
Well, to go back to another metaphor I overuse at the shop sometimes, a table needs 3 legs to stand. You can't have a table that stands on less than 3 legs. You can have 4 legs or 5 legs or 6 legs, depending on the size of the table. But you more or less need 3 legs.
Mm-hmm.
Dough, sauce, cheese. That's the foundation. There's only 3 legs that this table is going to stand on. And we can put a million things on top of that table if it's sturdy. But that's what we need. We need dough and sauce and cheese. And I guess that's kind of the logic of making sure that that's the first thing I try at any given shop, is because you make a good sausage, you buy a nice pepperoni, you do any number of things. You can make me something that's pretty good. But if you are starting on a perfectly level table that is engineered exactly correct, you don't have to gild the lily too much, because it's perfect. It's all right there. And so I guess that's kind of and with something as simple, I keep going back to it, but with something as simple as a cheese pizza, boy, there's no hiding. There's nothing. If your crust is uneven in a tiny part of it, if the sauce is too sweet, the sauce is not sweet enough, if it's over cheesed, because that's a thing that happens. I think over cheesing is a pretty common thing in pizza sometimes. And it's a look you come to know after many years of doing it, where a little bit of red poking through from the sauce, still a nice pocket of cheese, crust is even all the way around. Like, it's just, anything you put on top of that is going to be good, because, the rest of the ingredients, I can't make the floor and ceiling on pineapple are pretty close to each other. So if I'm putting pineapple on a pie, okay, like that's going to be pineapple. That stays pineapple. But boy, those first three things, that's it. That's the foundation. And if you're not doing that right, I can put 6 toppings on this and make a meal out of it, but what have we accomplished, right? And so I guess that's what it feels like to me, is that when you have a foundation like that, you're going to build something strong on top of it. And if you don't have a foundation like that, it doesn't really matter what you put on top of it. And so, yeah, it really is. Every day, I was saying this the other day at the shop, but I like when it doesn't happen every day, but every day my first pie that I make is a cheese pie. And then every now and then I get lucky and my last pie of the day is a cheese pie. And that feels like a nice bookend.
Coming full circle.
Yeah, and it's like, it's a silly thing, and it doesn't ruin my day if it doesn't happen. But when I can bookend my day by, I know about 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to have my first cheese pie going in. And if 12 hours later, my last order of the day, my last slice pie of the day is a cheese pie, I love that, because that's a perfect bookend to a very good day.
I think of it, I'm drawing a line like with burgers in my mind, and that I love innovative burgers that are putting thick cut bacon or just, different sauces, aiolis, those can be absolutely delicious. But I've had burgers where I've taken a couple bites and sometimes I like it. Maybe I really like it. Maybe it's just okay. And I'm just like, I don't know what this beef tastes like. And you have to pinch off a piece of the beef and eat it alone to even taste it, because everything else is covered up. And I think that happens with pizza sometimes.
100%.
When people are putting, here's the hot honey drizzle, and here's pepperoni. We've got, 6 different meats on here. This is our meat lovers pizza. And it's like, what? And you eat the slice and you're like, I couldn't tell you what that sauce tasted like.
Where's the pizza?
Yeah. What kind of cheese were they using? I don't know. Probably mozzarella, but I have no idea. So I like that you have to start with that foundation and really be able to say, I know that this is quality. And now you give customers the opportunity. You guys have like 40, 50 ingredients listed that they can add on if they want to. But you got to start with that base and say, I know this cheese pie if somebody wants to go plain, that will stand up on its
Absolutely.
own and please them. If they want to go nuts, let them go nuts.
No, I think you're right. The burger is a good analogy for that because I can throw 6 things on a burger and it's going to be so good because burgers are great.
Right.
You know, but I've had the same experience where it's like, boy, I know I'm enjoying what I'm eating and I know I'm going to be a little too full afterwards, but I'm not sure if I'm like pulling out a burger flavor here as much as I'm just kind of like eating a sort of, not a mess necessarily, but just like a big, and the same is true about a Supreme or a Meat Lovers or any number of these kind of pizzas where it's like I can put 6 toppings on anything and you're going to taste a lot and you're going to feel like you ate something. But, that's a perfect analogy for it. There's certain foods, eggs, like these things that it's like there's no hiding behind this. You either executed this correctly or you did not execute this correctly. And so, yeah, I think our Meat Lover stands up. I think our Supreme stands up. But it only stands up as tall as it does because the foundation it's built on is strong. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think the burger is a good analogy for that.
How'd you get into cooking originally, Dylan?
It was 2005, and I was in New Orleans after Katrina. And I was doing a job I really didn't like very much, doing demo, and it was after the storm, and so I was down there. And I was living in Nashville at the time, and I went down there after the storm. And I was going to this breakfast shop every day called Oak Street Cafe before my job, and then I went there one day, and there was a sign on the door that said, closed for lack of staffing, and it had the owner's phone number on there. And I texted the guy, I didn't know him very well, and I texted the guy, and I said, hey, if you're willing to train somebody from nothing, I would rather work for you than I would for this other job, and so holler at me if that's doable. And he called me back that day and said, if you want to show up tomorrow at 6 a.m., I'll teach you how to be a short order cook. And I was 21. Yeah, I was 21. And I was bad at it. I was, like there's some intuition that I had maybe, but I was 21. I was kind of useless. And I learned a lot there. I still make the red beans and rice every year that I learned how to make there. That's when I first started working with hog lard too, because that's a kind of a New Orleans thing where our breakfast plate was an extra $1 if you wanted it all fried in hog lard. But yeah, so I kind of happened into it in New Orleans just after Katrina, and I was only at that shop for maybe about 3 months, doing lunch specials and short order cook for breakfast. But yeah, from there, I did a little bit more front of house work after that too, and I got back to Nashville. Worked at a place that was kind of an institution down there for a long time. But then post that, it was deli in Iowa City and a couple other spots over the years. And then when I found pizza in Olympia, Washington in 2009, that's pretty much been it ever since. Other than, like I said, the time I spent at Koji here in Omaha. It's been pretty much cooking ever since for coming on 21 years now.
We're going to talk about Koji.
Sure.
We'll get there.
Sure.
But first, you mentioned you found your space in the kitchen or in restaurants, and we're like, okay, I think this is where I'm supposed to be. But you still bounced around between different regions of the country, between different styles of cuisine, different styles of cooking. What was it about pizza in Olympia, Washington, that you just slotted right into that peg, and we're just like, okay, this is it. Obviously we'll talk about Koji, but this is it for the rest of my life.
Sure. Yeah, and maybe in the first 6 months there, first year there, I don't know that I put that much to it in the sense that I knew that this would be what I'd do forever. But it did come up pretty fast where I started thinking, because I got pretty friendly with the boss out there pretty fast, and I saw his life and I saw what he got to do with his time. And I saw the culture that he had built and how much support there was there, to go back to the kind of community thing from earlier. And it just looked so enviable. It just looked like, he worked all the time, and he didn't, have some kind of fancy, glamorous life, but he seemed to enjoy his time, and he seemed to be in a good mood most of the time, and he seemed to take satisfaction out of what he was supplying, both to the community that ate there and to the community people that worked there. And it just looked very enviable to me. And the more I learned about it, the more I thought I could do it. And there, I think, too, I was lucky to start. I started at dough and then went to prep and then went up to expediting, which is basically just moving the pies around and cutting them, and then got to cook. And it was just the kind of thing that I knew every link in the chain. I knew where the morning started with the water and the flour and, and then moving every link up the chain there was like, it gave me a kind of maybe holistic appreciation for, like I said earlier, anything you've ever liked didn't show up that way. Anything you ever liked was because dedicated people at every link in the chain tried really, really hard. With no fanfare, with no attention, in a room by themselves, they tried hard at something. I suppose that was true before that, down in New Orleans or those other jobs I had. But something about it attached to me where it's like I said, it might have been Kenny, the owner of that shop. It might have been the culture that he procured. It might have just been my love of New York pizza itself. But it just stuck and it never really left. And even when I moved out here because I went from Olympia and then I had a minority ownership at a shop in Seattle for some years too. And even when I moved out here, because I'm from Sioux City originally and I had some friends here, the goal was always to start a pizza shop. Because after I was doing that, call it between 2009 and 2021 or so, I just knew, like, this is it. And like I say, like, it's not it's not the glamour and the money, because anybody who knows anything about this just knows that. And I don't mean that to, I don't want that to come across like I'm complaining either. Like, it's a great life. Like, it's not anything that I don't feel underserved by it. I don't remember the last time I really wanted something and couldn't have it, as far as my own personal life goes. I live pretty simply and I don't go without very often. So I don't mean to say that like it's some undue burden. It's just, if you're in it for the glamour and the money, you're not going to last very long because there's not that much glamour and there's not that much money. But if you're in it for this sort of downtime, the sort of quiet moments that are just either going to satisfy you or they're not. It's either going to be somewhat satisfying standing at the same table and making dough every day, or it's not. And it still is. It's like I said, that's where I'm heading after this, and interested to see what the dough turns out like today. It's just a little bit. It's the same every day, but if you pay close enough attention to it, it's new every day, and I like that about it.
I mean, you've talked about the culture. What did you learn from that? The gentleman's name. He worked at Two Boots Pizza in New York. You just said his name.
Oh, Kenny.
Kenny, yes.
Yeah.
What did you learn about creating culture? I mean, that's what I find so fascinating. You've talked about this, the culture of New York pizza, the culture of this shop, the culture that you're trying to create.
Sure.
What did you learn about whether it's restaurant culture, just culture overall, pizza culture from Kenny that you feel most shaped you?
Yeah, I suppose there's two prongs to that, which one of them is the culture on the employee side, which is and this isn't true. I don't mean to say that this is all New York Slice shops is this way, but it can be if you want it to be, and it's just extremely supportive. Kenny ran a shop, and he's still got a shop out there. It's been 30 years. And, me and other guys would play in bands and need to go on tour for 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever. And the way he would be supportive of that and be supportive, meaning you still had a job waiting for you when you get back, as long as your shifts got covered. And the way that, for myself and other people, life's hard and you're 24 and you need $300 to float you till next week. Kenny would hit you with that. And little things and just feeling like you were cared about. I remember one day I actually still most of the time do cut my own hair, and I cut my own hair back then. I did a really bad job one day, and Kenny was teasing me all day, and then he's gone for a couple hours and he comes back and he drops a brand new set of clippers on the table. And it's just like silly stuff like that where it's like, this guy's on your team, man. This guy's going to show up for you every day, and whether it's inside these four walls of the shop or something happens in your life, he built a community, and the community looked out for each other. Now you take that culture and you extend it out to the way you treat guests, the way you treat people, the way you do donations for schools or for nonprofits, or for, like, you can, if you if you build that in a small room, it's easier to sort of like get that out into a bigger room and extend that support to people that aren't inside those four walls. And so I think he wasn't the first really great boss that I had. There was one before that really kind of started to change things for me and started to make me view all this differently. But that's kind of when it locked in. And then as far as the other side of it goes, it's interesting. I've said this before to other people, but, I'm from the Midwest, and politeness is valued in the Midwest and everywhere, but I think particularly here. And I think that's a really good thing. And I think something that has always kind of made me chuckle about a New York pizza shop is that most of the time in life, to be polite is to say please and thank you and all this kind of stuff. And the funny thing about a New York slice shop sometimes is that if you get a line to the door and it's loud in there and there's a million people, the most polite thing you can do is when you get to the front of the line, immediately go, 2 cheese and a soda. Because it's like that keeps the line moving. And it's loud in there, so you got to kind of raise your voice for it. Everybody gets it. And so it's just interesting that like that just felt, with my other interests and other kind of subcultures I was a part of, that felt, for better or worse, like something I could kind of connect to. That like there wasn't always going to be this kind of pomp and circumstance to it. We could just treat each other like people. And whether I'm on that side of the counter or this side of the counter, let's just talk. We don't have to. It's just the pomp and circumstance of it. The void of pomp and circumstance to a New York slice shop is something that there's an earnestness there that I felt.
It's the cheese pizza of human interaction.
It's its basest. Yeah, exactly. It's all the way down here. There is no gilding the lily. There's no pomp and circumstance to it. And that leaves such a open space for earnestness. That leaves such an open space for people, communicating directly and knowing what they want. And, this all gets very kind of high-minded and intellectual. And on some level, it's just a pizza shop. Like, I'm not trying to make it sound like it's it's very intentionally not a completely new thing. But maybe that's just my introduction to the culture of it. Maybe not everybody has that same experience with the culture of a New York slice shop. But that was my experience with it. And I'm incredibly grateful for it. And Kenny is one of the people that, like I said, he wasn't my first great boss that showed me, oh, this can be different. This doesn't, people at the shop have heard me say this before, but you won't get good returns if you're running a place with fear. You might get 6 weeks of good work out of somebody. But if the reason somebody's working hard for you is because they're afraid that you'll yell at them or they're afraid that you'll fire them, that's not going to bear results in the long term. That's not going to get you to where you want to be in 2 years and 5 years and 10 years. Respect is how you get that. And it's got to be a mutual respect. And I saw guys doing that for me, and it really stuck with me. And I've been chasing down that culture ever since. And we're only 2 months in, but I feel like we're on our way to having a culture that's just like that, where the respect goes both ways. And I mean that from me to everybody who works there, but I also mean that from us to the customer side of things. And I think that just like I can expect good returns from the employees because there's a mutual respect there, if there's a mutual respect from us to the customers, they'll keep coming back. People don't want to be spoken down to.
So pizza has been this defining thing in your life since 2009. It's been a dream of yours, a goal of yours. I'm going to open my own pizza shop. Sure. You move back to the Midwest. How do you end up applying for a dishwashing job at a sushi restaurant, Yoshitomo?
Right.
Like, I feel question. Like your life is going in one very clear direction, and then all of a sudden you just veered to the right very dramatically. What happened there?
Well, I would have never seen it coming. It was really fortunate. But I guess the shortest answer I can give is I got out here in November 21, and I had a little bit of cash from the buyout of the shop in Seattle, most of which I was setting aside to buy a house in Omaha, which is part of the reason I came out here, because friends and the culture out here were something I liked, but also I could afford a house here in a way that I couldn't in Seattle. But anyway, I went to Yoshitomo in December of 2021. After I'd been in town for about 6 weeks, it was recommended by pretty much everybody that I talked to in town. And I went over there. We sat at the bar. I remember Mandy was station 1 that night, and I was blown away. And it wasn't just, again, to go back to the culture thing, it wasn't just blown away by the quality of the food. I was blown away by the professionalism. I was blown away by the way people spoke to each other. I was blown away by just, I mean, to be honest with you, especially, kind of being a pizza dummy all these years, these cats knew what they were doing. These cats were making cuts I'd never seen, and using knives and a sort of decorum that I'd never kind of seen from that close, where I was sitting at the bar watching this night happen, and the way everybody moved so silently, everybody was in such concert with each other. I was crazy impressed. I still remember that Connie miso was the first thing I ever had, and it was nuts. But yeah, so that's December. Call it a few weeks later. I've been off work now for about 2 months, and it's time to start looking for a job. But, to step back a second, I also knew that I needed to buy the house for financial reasons before I started the shop, because I didn't want to be over leveraged on the shop such that I wasn't going to be able to afford a house. And I wanted to, I was getting to be almost 40, and I wanted to start that part of my life. So I knew I had to get a job before I went and started the shop. And then Dave had an ad up online at the time for a Sunday dishwash position, and I knew I wasn't qualified to make sushi, but I could wash dishes. And so I sent him an email and asked if I could be his dishwasher on Sundays, and he said, you might be a little bit overqualified for that, but I got another project in the works that maybe we could sit down for, you might be right for. And so we let a few weeks go by, and then I touched base with him again, and we met for the first time. I believe it was February 22nd, 2022. I think it was 2/22/22. And he told me about the project. I had never heard of Yakitori before. I didn't know what it was. But he said he had this cooking, and he had an open position to kind of run things if I was interested. And so, yeah, it started from there. I worked for a month at Yoshi, kind of just doing grunt work. I don't say that in any kind of disparaging way, but I was the low guy on the totem pole, and I had no problem with that. I was mixing crab, and I was mixing mayo, and cutting cucumbers and that kind of thing in some ways. And I respect Dave for this. I think it was kind of a dummy test on some level to make sure that, like, okay, this guy had a shop, but let's make sure he's functional before we hand him the keys to anything, which was a good call. But yeah, after I must have passed the 3 or 4 week tryout that I had, he kind of let me loose in the basement of Yoshi to just kind of figure out Yakitori. Because he knew great Yakitori in terms of eating it, but he didn't know how to do it. And there was nobody in town that I could lean on to learn from.
It's brand new to Omaha.
So yeah, exactly.
And just to be clear, Yakitori is grilled chicken skewers, but grilled over a very specific charcoal style grill.
It's a binchotan charcoal.
Yes.
I could go on about that. It's smokeless. It's the only smoke you ever see if you're at Koji or another Yakitori shop is the fat from the chicken hitting that, and then that creates smoke. It's so compressed that it's just carbon. It's just there's no smoke to it. It flavors the chicken incredibly, and kind of fundamentally, it's also about using as much of the bird as possible. There's no waste to Yakitori done correctly. You're using every piece of that carcass. But yeah, so I didn't have any resources other than a couple books that we bought and a bunch of YouTube videos. And boy, those first skewers were not very good, Dan. They were. I actually have pictures of them because I was excited to be learning, and I was kind of taking progress pictures. And it's been a while since I looked back at them, but I remember some months back I was looking through stuff and I saw some of my early negima, and it was just awful. But we figured it out. And after about a month of cutting chickens in the basement and then taking a grill outside of the back of Yoshitomo and grilling in the alley, we, got it to be a deliverable. We got it to be a place where we were comfortable serving it. And, to be honest with you, though, that first 2 years of it was still, and this in some ways goes back to the thing about the dough and not trying to reinvent the wheel. Yakitori is another place where it's a tiny square, but there's a lot of room in that tiny square to get a little bit better, to get your cuts more even, to get fattier pieces of the chicken at certain parts of the skewer, such that the high heat is here and the low heat is there. Like, there's so many links in that chain, where it's how you cut it, how much skin you leave, how you set your grill up. It is incredibly complex. And on another level, it's putting chicken on a skewer and exposing it to heat. Like, it's however complicated you want to make it. And it really, really, in some ways, it scratched a very similar itch that pizza does, because it is such a small playing field, but there's so much depth. And so, yeah, it was, if somebody had told me when I moved out here that I would be the most experienced yakitori chef in a 1,000-mile radius in the first few years, I would have politely not believed that person. But I could not have asked for a better onboarding into Omaha and a sort of a better fit within a culture and the leadership, and just it was incredibly fortunate. And I hope and think Dave feels that way too, as far as just like both of us kind of getting lucky to be able to set that up. But yeah, it was something that I would have never under any circumstances expected to do. But it's funny, even going back to that first meeting, which was at the old omakase counter before you had Ota. I don't know if you remember that little side room. Mm-hmm. We sat there at that bar.
To the left of the sushi bar,
yes,
yeah.
Exactly. Back before they took that wall down. I told him at that meeting, eventually I'm going to have a pizza shop in this town. That's what I came out here for. I am thrilled about the opportunity to set this place up for you, and I want to collaborate, and I want this opportunity, but I don't want to feel like I hit the ball in 2 or 3 years or 4 years when it's time for me to step away and do my own thing. And of course, he was completely amenable to that. He's somebody in this industry that understands that things aren't zero sum. Your success is not my failure, and vice versa. And so he was nothing but supportive as far as that goes, and I think respected the upfrontness of me telling him that at the first meeting. But yeah, man, it was no world where I expected any of that to happen, but couldn't feel more grateful about it.
So how you worked there for about 4 years. Mm-hmm. How did you know this is the right time? This dream that I've had of opening the pizza shop, let's move on it now.
Sure. Well, I suppose it was just, so many of these things are, there's some luck involved. There's some timing and there's some luck. And so it got to be maybe about 2.5 years in. Yeah, it would have been about late 2024. So we opened Koji in May of 22. And right about late 24, it's time for me. I'm just feeling a little itchy under the collar. I've got the house. My life is at a place where it's kind of smoothing out as far as the sort of day-to-day of it all. And I've still got that. That's what I want to be doing. And it was just time for me to. So that's when I kind of stepped back from Koji. I was still there part-time, but that's when I kind of stepped back, handed off the reins, and was just spending more of my downtime with realtors and tracking down money for the front-end cost of this stuff. And that takes a very, very long time. I had a realtor, and we looked at, I don't remember how many, but more than a handful of spots. And everyone had their own, list of perfections and imperfections. But yeah, it was mostly just a matter of timing and getting lucky. And because this was always on the radar, there's the Benjamin Franklin, I believe in luck, and the harder I work, the more I have of it. And I suppose that's kind of how I feel about it. It's like there was a lot of it that was just this spot came open at around the time that I could raise this capital, and kind of all 3 or 4 of these prongs were active at the same time. But it's not just luck, because you have to put yourself in that position too. And so I suppose it just things take a long time. And it was late 2024, like I said, when I really kind of more earnestly started focusing more of my attention on, like, this is what I need to be pushing up the hill. This is what I need to be chasing down. And whether it was flights back to Seattle to talk to people about getting some startup capital, or meeting with the realtor, or just chasing anything down that I had to chase down. It took most of 2025 to chase all that down. And then the build out started late 2025. So it was about a year pursuit of that. And then maybe 4 months building out. March 9th, we opened for the soft open, and we've been open since March 12th. And so, yeah, it was, if I could have pulled it off sooner, I might have. But there's no part of me that looks back and kind of wishes that had happened, because I love the location. It being a second generation spot saved me a lot of money. I'm not sure I would have been able to do it from a full, just 4 walls and you build the whole thing. So yeah, it was always the plan, but everything costs too much and takes too long. So it just took a while.
So you've had this dream for a couple decades of owning your own pizza shop. March 12th is, like you said, that's when you open to the public. What was that day like for you emotionally, spiritually, like everything, just
right.
to finally come to this realization? And obviously very important, pizza is still evolving. It's not the same now as it was when you opened. It'll be different in 3 months. It'll keep improving. But like, to finally be at that space where you're like, this is what I've been chasing. I'm here. What was that like?
Yeah, boy, that was something, man. March 9th was really the more surreal one of that, because that was the soft open.
Okay.
And, and I haven't said anything yet about it, but I should mention too that, like, Pete Hutchinson, who is kind of the right-hand man at the shop, and on his way to, I won't bore you with the details of it all, but when I first took on ownership at the shop that I had in Seattle, it was earned through a sweat equity, through some years of work. And that's the track that Pete's on at the shop here. And so I say that to say, soft open night, me and Peter on the line, I got as many people as I can staff with that night. And we were, you've been inside, we stand here and there's a counter and all that kind of stuff. And there was a line at the door for 3 hours. And we're just back there having fun, making pizza. And he was there for every day of the build out with me. And there was so many days that we were on ladders, and then we were, just doing work we're not good at. Like, we got it done, but like very, very aware that this isn't what we do, right? And so there were so many days that we're in the middle of it, and one of us would say to the other one, like, I can't wait to be good at something again. I can't wait to, like, be doing a thing where I just know how to do this, and I know I'm doing a good job at it. And it's what I like doing, and I get to provide something for somebody. And man, that night was incredible. That night was like, truly, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. Like, it was one of the best nights of my life. I think about the afternoon too. There was some drama in the afternoon can't go into all that. But even that day, like that entire day, was just a surreal experience. And then, we knew people were coming. We'd invited a lot of people, and Pete especially, because he's worked at so many shops in town. The only job I've ever had here was Koji, but Pete's worked at Dolomiti and Bouillon and Via and all sorts of places. And so we knew people were coming, but it's like you kind of don't believe it till it happens. So doors open at 5, and 4:45 we start seeing some people outside. And we're like, okay, here we go. And then, like I said, we opened that door, and it didn't close for 3 hours. And everybody was coming up to the counter telling us how good everything was. And we could tell that everybody was having fun. And empty plates were coming back, and empty pans were coming back. And everybody was just hooting and hollering and just having a great time. And, man, like, if you could bottle that night and sell it, that's a business. Because it was incredible. And I know that's not... that's a kind of banal adjective to use, but I don't know how much better. It a dream. And it fills me when I kind of revisit it in an active way like I am right now. I guess gratitude is kind of the thing that comes back to me the most, because it was just like, I said this to a handful of people, but like, it's so, not everybody gets to try to do what they want. Not everybody gets to, just try to stand up a vision that they believe in. And getting the opportunity to do something that I think is really good, that I believe in, is its own reward in a way. Meaning on some of, like, even if it fails, which we're doing great, and I'm very confident with the future, and I love the shot, but sink or swim, I got a shot, like I got a real shot at doing something that I like doing and that I really believe in, the quality and the philosophy of it. And not everybody gets that opportunity. My folks didn't get that opportunity, and most people I ever met don't get that opportunity. And so to, like I said, sink or swim, man, we got the chance. And nobody's guaranteed that. And I'm just so grateful. It's crazy, crazy, crazy how just how easy it is to access the gratitude and the way every day. And, the soft open was surreal, but to be honest with you, every day kind of ends up having a percentage of that feeling where it's like, we unlock the doors at 11 and I just hope somebody comes in. And every time somebody comes in, I'm like, oh, cool.
People are here.
Cool, somebody came in today. And then, they like it and they come back and they tell their friends. And it's just like, it's a surreal thing to get to do with your time. And the amount of gratitude you can kind of, if you can stay connected to it, and if you can stay connected to it and the experience of doing it, there's no way to feel anything but gratitude. There's no way to feel anything but just so lucky that, 13 hours, 14-hour days, they're hard, man. But like, I get to do stuff I like. I get to take a chance. I get to put out a thing I believe in and then see if the public likes it. Like, man, what an opportunity. I'm repeating myself now just because this question, this kind of revisiting this in my head gets me into a place. But man, it was surreal. And I just am filled with gratitude about it. It was unbelievable.
I'm so glad that you get to experience those emotions. I'm sure that there are days where you have to be reminded of those.
Oh, for sure.
And it's very hard. But
for sure.
Thank you so much for putting all that work in, because Omaha's got some great pizza places, and now we got another one. Sure. I'm so happy that Very Important Pizza exists. People, if you haven't been, go see this guy. When you hear his love when he talks about pizza and the gratitude he has for this opportunity, it's not a fake, and you can taste it in the food. Just outside downtown. Mm-hmm. Get down there and try it. Dylan, thank you so much for taking some time to come on the show today. This was such a cool experience.
You're so welcome. I really appreciate everything.
Awesome. Omaha, as always, thanks for eating with us.